I'm Marcos Dinnerstein, host of A Better Mousetrap. Today we're speaking with Matt Hooper. Matt, before we get into all the cool projects you're working on, give us some of your personal background. Who are you?
It's a good question, one I try to figure out every day. A less obnoxious response to that would be I'm a guy who's very enthusiastic about particularly the intersection of technology and media, as so many of us alive in the world are, and I feel like I'm lucky enough to have been able to spend about 8 years of my life dancing on either side of that intersection. And I'm currently trying to bring that intersection together.
Specifically how?
I don't really feel like answering that.
Well, in general.
I've worn a lot of hats. There's a top hat joke in there I'm too lazy to make. I right now am the co-founder of LFT Media and the host of Live from Tomorrow. I also host two web series in partnership with IBM, The Desk and 72 Hours of Blockchain. I have just begun living a nice life on Mondays as the entrepreneur in residence at WeWork Labs Dumbo Heights. And prior to all of this, I was the vice president of open innovation at Barclays, where I ran Rise New York for 2 years. So, you know, I've been able to live a life where I get to be involved with both startups and corporates, and now on this show, Live from Tomorrow, that I'm sure we'll be talking about a good bit throughout the hour, I'm able to sort of bring to the masses something I've been very fortunate to be able to see in my own life, which is how startups think, how startups pitch, and how a broad group of investors can get access to those exciting startups.
Okay, so let's make this a nice sandwich, a Live from Tomorrow sandwich.
Great. And feel free to use none of this. It's all bad. Okay.
There you go. So first of all, when is this event?
Sure.
And what will people be
Great
seeing at
question.
this event?
So let's give some history on this, shall we? Let's go back to 2015 when, let's be honest, the world was a much better place. Back in 2015 when things were much nicer. Yeah, exactly. Marcos is sweating right now.
Rending of garments.
Right. Basically, I've been, and forgive words like basically and all these sort of weird little prepositions I'll add. I've long been interested in film and comedy. It's something I did all throughout high school and throughout my time in college. But professionally, I've only ever really worked in digital products and in and around startups. So in 2015, when Dimitri Kouvaros and I had the idea for starting a sort of demo day for our Startup Next cohort, we were running the Startup Next program in New York, which used to be run by Up Global before the Techstars acquisition. We thought, what's a really funny way of giving these 5 companies that are so brilliant, these really great founders, a demo day? I'm sure many people listening to this go to demo days all the time. There's sort of demo day fatigue, I'm sure, in some parts of the world, particularly our part of the world here in New York City, where there's a new demo day every day. You'd think there wouldn't be that many things to demo, but there are.
Indeed there are.
Indeed there are. And Dimitri and I put together what was really like a little meetup called Live from Tomorrow, which was sort of, we used to call it like Letterman meets Shark Tank, where it was a variety show format, most like a late night talk show format with real startups pitching. And we've done now 6, 7, maybe 8 of these over the last 3 years. It's a fairly sporadic, we say it's monthly, it's not monthly, it's like quarterly. An exciting show that honestly, like we say words like organic, we say words like community. In fact, we say them so often in our society that they're kind of abused, but we did build an organic community around this show. Where we knew we had something special. We did the first show on July 30th, 2015 down at Lower Manhattan headquarters at LMHQ. And it was the biggest storm of that summer, and we'd sold 140 tickets. And of the 140 tickets sold, in the middle of a torrential rainstorm, 137 people showed up.
That is enviable.
Yes. And so we thought, oh, we have something here. If 3 people didn't show up in quasi-hurricane weather.
Right, and they drowned.
Exactly. And then everyone died. And I lived to tell the tale. That led to something kind of miraculous, which was a regular gig for like amateur comics like myself.
Were you charging for that?
We were. And we're charging for the event coming up too, which I'll get to in a minute. So any of you freeloaders out there, be gone! We did this again quarterly over the last few years, and each Live from Tomorrow episode tackled a different sort of technology vertical. So it could be civic tech, it could be blockchain, VR. We did one on just accelerators, what the hell an accelerator was and how to even get involved in them. And then eventually I used to have a co-host, then eventually I hosted it solo. We sometimes did episodes with startups, sometimes did episodes without startups. We had a band join that have been our house band since the very third meetup we did, the Academy Blues Project. They're extraordinary. And we've been doing this now for a while. And last year, a friend of mine, a colleague from IBM, who I got to know while I was at Barclays, brought some friends from the IBM Blockchain Business Group to one of our meetups with the very same night that we had some folks from Mashable come. And we ended up then making a deal to stream live on Mashable, sponsored by the IBM Blockchain Business, a blockchain-focused Live from Tomorrow episode. And that was last year, July 30th, 2017. It was called Live from Tomorrow Blockchain for Business. And we, with really no marketing, had almost 35,000 live views in a stream, and a great relationship with Mashable and with IBM. And that has led to my hosting 2 other shows with IBM, and has also allowed me to take a year of, frankly, developing my skills as a host, of developing an audience around this. And when I was asked recently by a number of producers, both here and in Los Angeles, what's the show you want to make? What does your heart kind of tell you? The answer is I've wanted to Live from Tomorrow, the actual variety show meets Shark Tank pitch we came up with all those years ago. I want to do it for real. I want to do it as an hour-long show wherein, between sketches and thoughtful guest interviews, real startups are pitching for real audience investment and investment on the part of the show. So I'm pleased to say that we have a partnership with Republic.co, the equity crowdfunding platform spun out by the same companies, the same company that's produced AngelList and Product Hunt. And I just couldn't be more excited to work with them. So this means that on June the 27th, if you buy tickets for our show Live from Tomorrow, you, in the audience, will be able to invest and vote on startups pitching for real equity investment.
You said that was June 27th?
June 27th. Doors at 6:30, show at 7. The whole thing closes at 9.
Okay, folks, get them while they're hot.
Get them while they're hot.
They will be hot.
They are hot. Live from Tomorrow, this theme, the theme of this episode is Sumtopia, because we don't know what the hell topia we're in. Is it a utopia, a dystopia? That-topia. We're just in Sumtopia. At Caveat NYC. Caveat's an exciting, wonderful new venue. Well, not so new. It's been open a number of months now, but it's an innovative venue where a lot of kind of edutainment takes off. So science-focused, technology-focused.
Where in town is that?
It's on Clinton Street.
Okay.
So it's on the Lower East Side, and we're all very excited to host you down there.
Nice. Okay, so you mentioned your relationship with IBM. I get sponsoring. Sponsoring is an obvious connection.
Yeah.
But you're actually doing marketing for them.
Yes.
And when I hear the words, which you don't hear often, but when I hear the word corporate and humor, I think oxymoron.
Yeah.
You pull it off. I've seen an episode of The Desk that
Thank
you
you.
showed.
Yeah.
How do you approach that as a creative endeavor?
Yeah, I think sort of ideologically, I had this thought actually while I was writing something for this upcoming show last week. I think that everybody has a sort of safe place where they can find humor. I'm not sure where it is in them, right? So if you're going to swear a lot, if you're going to make fun of, if you're going to make a joke with politics or religion or something, that's obviously not what you want to do in the corporate sphere. But that doesn't mean that corporates are unfunny. It means that they have different reasons for existing. They're working on their focus is shareholder value, and for those particularly innovative big companies, they're focusing on launching new products and generating new revenue streams. So it's not unlike being the Tonight Show on NBC, which is owned by a massive corporation and very cognizant of sponsorship, right? Because that's a commercial-based model. It's an ad-supported model. And FCC rules, exactly. So Jimmy Fallon can't say fuck or whatever. Maybe I can. Maybe that'll get beeped out. I don't know. Thank you. Too late, Marcus.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. We'll fix that in post. But during our show, we also don't really do that. We did one sketch right after Trump was elected where I played Santa Claus as like a Trump voter. Because he was worried, sort of older white man, worried about having his job automated by like delivery drones. Why would you need the sleigh and the reindeer anymore? And it was a funny sketch, but a few people in the audience said after me, they were like, why'd you cursed a lot in that sketch? And I thought, like, have you read, one of the Twitter streams of the people that are out there supporting this guy?
Sure.
Like, it wasn't like I wrote, curse words to just say it, but it did teach me something, which was Live from Tomorrow has been historically family friendly. And family friendly does play well in the corporate space. And that was a lesson. I'm also not, just as a comedic voice, mine is not, blue, I don't do blue humor. I don't like, I don't have a sort of Seinfeldian, Cosbyan, it's a terrible example for anything anymore. I apologize.
Right,
Sorry,
sure.
Seinfeld or Sinbad. I mean, Sinbad was one of my absolute favorite comedians of all time. I grew up. I'm a huge Sinbad fan, and really excited to know he's going to be on a new TV show actually next year.
Cool. I'm going to get back to his stuff. I haven't seen his
in a long time, right?
He's working a while.
No one has. He is one of the great unsung comedians of the last 25 years. Sinbad is just a really brilliant guy. And anyway, he works clean. And there's something to be said for that,
I'm a big fan of it because I think part of blue humor's effect is its shock value, and therefore it's cheap. You don't need the craft to do blue humor at a certain level that you do to do what you're calling family.
And so I think that's the long answer to like how can the desk play for IBM is like, a lot of these executives want to show their kids what they get to work on, and their kids aren't going to want to see someone running around swearing at everybody. But candidly, I think, I left Barclays to do this show. The other IBM shows have been really fun, but this show is the only one that I have created years before I thought about doing this professionally, Live from Tomorrow.
Right.
And one of the things I like about, and again, we'll talk about more in depth what the show's going to be soon. I don't want to, jump too far ahead. But what I like about what we've been able to do in all prior episodes, meetups, whatever we used to call them before we kind of professionalized ourselves, is we built an audience of people that could be, 10, 11, 12 years old, or could be 81, 82, 83. And I know that because in the very first episode we had my grandparents and my girlfriend's grandparents judging the startups that were pitching in a pre-taped sketch.
Nice.
And so the premise was, can if your grandma could understand this, then you have a customer, right? It was passing the grandma test.
Right.
And that's a very famous thing in the world of VC, as we all talk about. Right? So we actually filmed that sketch, and it got a huge, one of those laughs in the audience. It wasn't just like this is funny, but like a sort of sigh of relief. This is going to be sweet, and this is going to be appealing to as many people as possible. And here you have these sort of, it looked like a scene out of Broadway Danny Rose. You have these, these like sort of, 90-year-old Jews from Brooklyn and the Bronx talking about, exciting digital products, whether or not they'd use them in a way that was immediately endearing. And I always bring up, I think, the way Billy Crystal hosted the Oscars. I think there's sort of like big metrics of my own. So I just turned 30, so my experience growing up with comics like Sinbad, Billy Crystal, et cetera, is, my heart lay in the sort of Def Comedy Jam world. I knew that those guys were the funniest guys in the world, but like, could I get away with what Martin Lawrence said? Absolutely not. But what I could probably do, especially given my interest in business and my interest in this innovation space, is channel those performers that did work clean, which is why I mentioned Crystal, Sinbad. They put on a show in the old kind of Bob Hope traditional sense,
Right.
We do Broadway spoofs. We do, the desk itself is a nod to, more the Carson, Jack Parr, Steve Allen era of the Tonight Show than anything that Fallon's doing right now. And I think there's something also funny about that, about having some kind of, like Bob Newhart-y sort of mid-century aesthetic going on in this show that's all about tomorrow, that's all about the future. And so, you think a lot about tonally how you want to do a show like that, and you very infrequently arrive at the idea that you're going to be dirty, and that generally checks out with the Fortune 50 businesses you want to go make stuff
Yes,
with.
but you have further constraints than just blue. You have the messaging that you've been charged or tasked, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
with getting across.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and this is where, like, again, having my experience, and one of the things I've said is, if Live from Tomorrow doesn't work, it really doesn't work, because I've tried every version of this possible. This is just sort of the stuff that goes on in my head too. You know, I'm aware that having worked at a big company, having worked for big companies as a vendor, and having worked, you know, having wanted to work with a big company as a startup looking for a customer, each permutation meant that you're selling the vision of a big business. So as long as you're comfortable with that, I think you can kind of tie that messaging into something. I also like, you know, for all those who I think are worried about the idea of, like, you know, can comedy be funny in corporate walls, I really do think about the friends of yours that you have that work at big companies, and remember that they also like to laugh. You know, it's that, you know.
Right. But the challenge is getting the messaging and finding situational material
Right.
that's consistent with that messaging that's funny.
Yes. Right. And I guess the last point I'll make on that, so yes and, as it were, to everything you
Yes,
just
indeed.
said. Yeah, I think that.
I know yes and.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. What we try to do, especially on something like The Desk, which I know you brought up, which we did 2 episodes of that with IBM, you know, the goal there is to sort of do it while acknowledging the branded nature of it, right? There's a segment where I threw to an IBM executive for, you know, their thoughts on, in the case of the episodes we did, IoT and blockchain technologies. So we go into it sort of with a nod and a wink. I think that people are very comfortable, you know, we all know that we have to make a living, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that people are very comfortable acknowledging a brand as long as it's done honestly and with, you know, tongue in cheek and a wink. And
Sure.
we do that very well, I think. But
that's what my response was when I saw
yeah,
that episode
yeah,
a few weeks ago. I totally bought into and accepted the premise that this was promotional
yep,
in fundamental nature, but the doing of it, the
Yes.
execution, for my money, again, thank you, was so well done that it became irrelevant to me that a commercial message was built into it. It was the execution that I enjoyed so much.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know. Again, I imagine this interview is going to get edited down to like 1 minute. I don't know if I've said anything usable, but I think a lot about the ways to communicate. Yeah, between big brands and end users a lot. I mean, I think that you just kind of, if you chew on those ideas often enough, you'll come up with something, I think, that's unique. But again, it's about honesty. I think it's about acknowledging, you know, this is sponsored by MailChimp, or this is sponsored by this or that, and just being very open about that. I think when people feel turned off by corporate messaging, it's when, you know, a 400-year-old business says that they're riding the wave of the future with their own ideas.
Yeah.
I think it's like you can just kind of call bullshit on that.
Yeah, it's kind of patronizing. How stupid do you think I am?
Right, exactly. It has to do with everything. And then also, I know what products you make, you know, sir or madam. I know what you do, and none of that is what I would necessarily mark as innovative.
You, sir, are not disruptive.
Right. And that's, you know, and that's I think the joy of having done sort of innovation, having done innovation work at a big bank from 2015 to 2017 was I met a number of people who had my job or a similar job at other big companies who were really funny, like genuinely funny people.
Right.
And, you know, I went to an improv show last night that a friend of mine was in Greenpoint, and, you know, I would, for my money, I think that with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 performers in that event, I have found that people I knew from Pepsi, from Verizon, from, you know, all these major companies are actually just as funny as anybody there.
There's a lot of talent
There's
out there
a lot
in
of
the world,
talent in the world.
not necessarily applying those talents
Right.
to in a professional
Right, but
capacity.
the sort of like, is your brain working a little differently than other people's, which is what makes the best comic minds. I know a lot of people like that, but what they get to do is sort of build weird futury stuff, you know, and I think that sense of humor was something I also wanted to tap into. I thought, like, okay, I know a lot of funny people who understand this world. Why are they not talking about it publicly the way they talk about it to me?
Yeah.
You know, we all go out for drinks and coffee together and kind of talk shop, and we're always laughing. There's always something funny. We wrote an entire, my two writers and I wrote an entire television pilot based in part on a relationship we had with a big technology company working as a vendor. Because the entire story was just so funny. And the way that all the executives in the experience imagined themselves just amused us endlessly. They were relatable, interesting people that were great characters and were themselves, you know, on the page and off, enormously funny. Nothing I've just said is funny in the last 5 minutes, I realize, but I promise there are some funny people. I'm talking very clinically about.
That's the great thing about talking about humor.
Right.
It goes to that
It's like
expression.
sex. It's like hard to talk about. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of the metaphor which was.
Right. Well, I thought you were going to say no. It's not hard to talk about sex.
No hard jokes here.
Hey, man.
The operation was a success, but the patient died.
Right.
That's what happens when you talk about humor. When you dissect
Exactly.
the craft of why something's
Right.
funny.
You're removing.
You drain the aha factor.
You're removing the art. I think
Yeah.
you're removing the art. Yeah.
So, but nevertheless, I find talking about the craft of humor endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give it away, but I also think that the thing that I like about doing Live from Tomorrow now is I'm writing these sketches that are very generalist about our sort of unknowable technology future, and that is very relatable to people. And if I think I started, just to be blunt, like, we're not talking about Trump, we're not talking about sort of the social tensions and the culture wars that we found ourselves in. I talk about that enough in my own life. We are talking always about a little bit in the future,
Mhm.
which offers us the ability to be a little more sort of wacky. Like, I think it gives us a chance to be a little more abstract in our thinking. But also it starts from a premise of genuine optimism because you have to build the future. We all have to build the future. And so if I'm doing sketches about a smart house, which we have coming up, we're doing sketches about an AI doctor that wants to check your prostate. If I'm doing a sketch about, last year we had a very popular sketch that was shared many, many thousands of times, Love on the Blockchain, which is the big sketch we did for the blockchain show, wherein my character discovered that his girlfriend was paying a new boyfriend. And he was able to find this new boyfriend because he was exceedingly jealous of him by tracing the supply chain of a slice of cheese, right? He was using blockchain technology to find this guy in Ireland. All of these ideas are, again, you take out the art, you take out the sort of jazz when you talk about it, but they're based on like obsessions. They're based on very human things. The fear of going to the doctor or going to the bathroom in these new sketches. The fear of having your ex that you might still have feelings for move on when you haven't quite moved on. That was the premise behind Love on the Blockchain.
There's a lot at stake.
A lot at stake, and they're
in
very
each of these situations.
right. And they're very universal. They're not tied to the moment. They're not tied to politics, and they're also not even tied to anything other than there's something extremely funny in the duality of man and machine, of human and mecha. Is just a really funny idea, and we can play around with that.
Sure thing. Charlie Chaplin in modern times.
Exactly. Yeah, was it Buster Keaton in The Clock, right? Was that
Yes.
him? Yeah. So I mean,
Yes.
like all of the silent comedy.
Sure.
That's a really good point. That like even the first comic films were the relationship between a locomotive, running at full speed towards you and trying to get the damsel off the tracks. Or what was the Lumiere? I'm pronouncing that wrong, and I don't think it was Lumiere. I think that's the candlestick in Beauty and the Beast. But those brothers, I'm such an idiot. But the moon,
Lumiere.
yeah, Lumiere with the rocket and the eye of the moon. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
So everything is about. So I think that the dream of innovation and the dichotomy and the challenge between people and machinery, whether that machinery is blockchain-enabled tech, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, whatever, the Internet of Things, that there's a lot of funny in that. There just is. There's something really funny about watching someone obsess over trying to remember their password and then having to go through a million screens, re-enter a CAPTCHA code, get sent an email, change your login, not remember which browser you had everything saved in. Like, these are enormous pains in the modern relationship to technology. They're just funny.
They are.
And they get bigger laughs, I've noticed, from corporates and startups alike. They get big laughs from an audience, and again, they feel inclusive. They feel like everybody has been through these experiences. Whereas I noticed, and this is very interesting, that if you look at a lot of like modern comedy, there's sort of this fight against, the government in this particular case that isn't how everyone is necessarily feeling. Now, that's neither here nor there. For the record, I'm horrified by this administration.
Sure.
I mean, as horrified as one can be.
Sure, but when looking at humor, I get your point, which is that there is a certain trend in topical humor that is not inclusive of a broader human experience.
Well, I think that what I guess I'm saying is, like, I proudly did not vote for Donald Trump for president, but I think those who did can still watch the show and enjoy it, and we can actually have like a connection.
There's a commonality.
Yeah, I mean, a genuine commonality, because when I wake up and when that person wakes up, we share a day, we share experiences on the internet. No matter how personalized your feeds get, someone's going to forget their password, and someone's going to have a tough day, and someone's going to want to feel loved, and like those things that we're trying to design comedy around. And I know that I brought up weirdly those Billy Crystal monologues or the Sinbad stuff because I was talking about clean comedy. What I also liked about that was, every year, every Oscars that Billy Crystal hosted, I'm just old enough that I didn't have YouTube or Wi-Fi or anything when I was growing up. So, and my parents didn't know how to tape anything in the VCR. So every year you just had to remember the show.
Yeah,
like that was I'd actually catch it and remember it. So every year I'd go and I'd watch this show. I'm like 7, 8, 9 years old, and it was the one time everyone around me kind of calmed down and watched this extremely funny guy sing about movies or do jokes about movies, and it was really interesting. And then that interest in like those early Oscars shows led to a lifelong love of stand-up and of stage performance and all these things that I think are really great. And so I just feel like that sort of old showmanship that was exuded by those hosts, it's not just like ripe for a comeback, which it always is, but it's also a thing that anyone can get. It's like, but it's not lowest common denominator. It's humor with a sophisticated bent for as many people as possible, and that's the tone of the show we've been trying to chase for every single meetup we've done.
So, how long is each show? How many sketches do you do?
Yeah, good question.
Talk about
what is the show?
Format.
The format of this show is going to be ideally the format going forward, which is kicks off with a comedy sketch, pre-taped, interesting monologue / musical number, the first startup pitches, first guest interview, second musical number, second startup pitches, second pre-taped sketch, third startup pitch, final guest interview leads into a closing number, and the audience votes for their favorite startup while the closing number plays and everyone's singing, and then people can vote on their favorite companies. That winner will receive a check from us, from the show Live from Tomorrow, but that will obviously be invested for equity, but you, the audience member that night, can still invest in any of those companies on Republic.co, even if we didn't necessarily select them as the winner. That's the great thing, is all companies are still open for investment. It's just that one will win the LFT Seed Investment Prize and the others won't.
So how easy will it be for viewers to invest? Are they going to have to download an app, or are they going to have to go to...
So this is the tricky thing about doing this podcast before the pilot, which is if you're not there that night, it's going to be hard, because in the future we'll be live streaming this.
Right.
And we have live streamed historically, but for purposes of shopping this to streaming networks and other sources of distribution, we're creating a slightly proprietary hour, and we'll slowly put videos up on YouTube, but we're not going to live stream this. So if you're not in the audience that night, you will not be able to vote.
Right.
But in the audience that night, yes, we're gonna give you. You're gonna vote via, I think, Google form is what we've decided, and then we tally that way, and then you can go. It's simple enough, and you just go vote, and then you can go. Invest on Republic.co. Forgive me if I keep saying vote and invest interchangeably. I have a Friday brain, guys. I'm sorry. But yeah,
investing is a form of voting.
It is, and we are doing both. I was going to say we're doing both.
It's a substantial form of voting with your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and having the sort of confidence and belief in someone whose dreams you think are great and you want to support financially.
And so what part will you play in the evening?
The very loud, tall, and annoying man on stage. No, I'm the MC. They can't get off. No, there's no Apollo hook for me. Yeah. No, I'm there the whole night. I am the MC. So I've hosted this show since its infancy, and I think I can certainly move this thing along, and until until they find someone better, which is basically anybody, literally anybody else on the planet. I'm gonna try to keep this job as long as possible. The nice thing about creating a job for yourself is that you are tied to your job security.
You
So
can be the Bartleby the Scrivener of MC shows.
yeah,
They're trying to get you for apologies.
that's
for
a hell of a reference.
apologies for the literary reference,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this was a Herman Melville story in which the business closes. They fire this guy, and he just won't leave. He keeps saying, "I prefer not."
Yeah, yeah,
That could be you.
it could be.
Something to aspire.
It's
to.
also a better outcome than anything that's happened in other Melville stories to other characters. Like it's an optimistic,
Good point.
it's an optimistic
That's right.
reference. Yeah.
That's right. Nothing fishy about this one.
Nice. Oh man. All right. There you go. Nothing fishy about this. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. I mean, I really. Every one of these moments, again, I know is going to end up on the cutting room floor. I'm just going to keep throwing this out. Please come to the show. It is the smallest venue we've ever played. It's only about 110 seats, but it's going to create an intimacy that, again, we have about another week of the tickets being on sale. If you haven't gotten tickets, there are some left. Please buy.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would second that. This is going to be good. It's
yeah.
going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Marcos.